Hey everyone, it's Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore, and yeah, I just realized I have things set up funny. I was recording something recently where I wanted my face not where it normally is, so let's fix that, shall we? Uh, there we go. Maybe better. Maybe better. All right. Um, Let me actually just keep fiddling here. So, hi everyone. Marc Sabatella, Mastering MuseScore. This is the Music Masterclass, in which we are, talking about making music. And in particular, we're going to be continuing the project we've been working on recently with my brother Mike's Rise Up and Shine and talking about the piano part. And some people have posted their versions of that already, which is great. And we're going to be taking a look at that as well as some other things. So yeah, and the audio was also weird because I was doing weird things at the time. I think it'll be I think it'll be fine overall, but let me just do one more thing to help with that, perhaps. Okay. So now I'm in my best chance for success. Okay. So let's recap what we're doing. We're looking at building a piano part for this song that we've been looking at, and we've already talked about what the melody is. We've talked about what the chords are, and we've talked some about the rhythm. And now we're looking at how to actually express this in a piano part. To what extent we're going to use that melody in our piano part. Obviously, we're going to use the chords, but how we're going to express that rhythm. And so all of those things are coming together. And in yesterday's cafe, for during one portion of it, I showed you a MIDI part that my brother actually recorded. Not He recorded it with the idea that maybe this would be something that might be used for the sheet music, not like it was going to go with the recording, and I want to come back to that in a moment. But let's start here by just resetting a little bit to listen to. I keep focusing on the chorus of the piece because that's, I figure if we can get the chorus, we can kind of get everything else. So that's what I'm going to do here is we're going to hear it from the beginning and talk about the chorus, and if we have time to also talk about the verse some, we will. But let's focus on really doing a good job with this chorus, all right? So here we go.
Rise up and shine, rise up and shine, rise up and shine, shine, shine. On you the light of the Lord will shine, shine.
All right. So that is the chorus, and I feel like if we can get a good piano part for that we're happy with, we can do anything, right? We can make the rest of the piece all work as well. So let's focus on that. And so I do want to start by, reviewing some of the things that we had talked about before about this piece. So we have the melody. Something like that, right? So we want to have that melody in our head as we're building this piano part, and we talked about the fact that the rhythm of of the original piece there kind of had this 3-3-2 organization. The guitar part is kind of, and bass is kind of organized around bump 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 bump. And so we talked about that, and then how that's going to translate to piano, and the way that here was what Mike's sample MIDI sounded like. Okay, so what we can tell from this, and this was just something he just played in quickly, recorded it, and then tried to import into MuseScore. And when you import into MuseScore, unfortunately, you get this mess for all the reasons that I discussed in the cafe yesterday, because figuring out which hand played which is the best clef to use, what to do when two notes overlap slightly, right? All these things are basically AI problems, and MuseScore does some tiny amount of trying to sort that out, but it's not going to give great answers. So, but one thing that we can tell, like if I sort out, like I worked through in the cafe yesterday a little bit about what's happening, but if you just follow this first measure, I mean, yes, it looks horrible the way MuseScore imported it, but it's not actually a complicated part at all, right? It's this. So that's bum, boo, bum, bum, and then all this stuff is just tied over, and then ba-do. This is just kind of an arpeggio coming down. That's middle C to A, and then a low C. So I feel it's something like this. That's it. And I might play that in my left hand. Or maybe I play the C again with my right hand, not totally sure. Something like that. And then it's that basic pattern moved through the other chords. The next measure is basically this. I think, I'm trying to sort through all the multiple voices and stuff that's going on here, but it really is that level of simplicity. So, Colleen, this is what you'll want to go back and watch the cafe from yesterday while I explain this, but this here is a MIDI import, and from a live recording that he did, a live MIDI recording, and the problem is there's all sorts of places where, like, if you don't play all three notes exactly identically at the same time, you end up with a situation where MuseScore sees that you played the B flat a little bit later than the other notes, and it says, oh, you need it played a little bit later. I'm going to use multiple voices for that and have the first two notes show up on beat 1 and the second note show up a 16th later. Or similarly, if you don't release them all together, it's going to indicate different release times for all of them, and that all requires multiple voices. So as a result, MIDI import of a live performance is often going to produce messes like this. So that's just the way it is. You can improve it by quantizing in your whatever program you use to record the MIDI file. If you quantize it, it will improve things. But yeah, we are obviously not going to be able to use this. The actual part is fine, but the result of the MIDI import was not. So let's talk about basically what's going on here, because I think it's a very good part. It's a chord in the right hand on 1, 2, and that's the basic chord. 1, 2, and then the next measure is bum, bum, and then the next measure is I'm trying to sort out all the different clefs and things. Bum, bum, and then in the next measure, bum, bum. So it's consistently doing 1, 2, and, which is consistent with that 3-3-2 business, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So his accents, where he's placing those chords, totally fits what he's doing on the guitar, and then he's, instead of repeating a note or repeating a chord, he's arpeggiating in his left hand. Totally makes sense, right? It's actually quite similar to the demonstration version that I did in the in the lesson that I posted earlier this week. Not the same notes by any means, but a very similar type of approach, right? So yeah, he's basically, and if we follow through this, like you can't really tell by looking at this, but listen to this. Now let's start it again. Every single eighth note was accounted for except for beat 3. I think I heard this. Boo, 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 bum, boo, ba, bum. Would you agree that that's what we heard? One and two and four and. Let's hear that again. That one had every single eighth note accounted for in the second measure. So he's basically accounting for every eighth note in the arpeggiating, right? And in the first measure, there didn't happen to be anything on beat 3, but in the second one, there did. Let's hear bar 3. You know, he's actually being fairly consistent about that, right? The first, if you think about this as 2-bar phrases, the first bar phrase is always this: boop, 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 bum, boop, bum, bum. And the second bar is always this: boop, 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 bum, 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 bum. So there is a note, boop, 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 bum, 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 bum. There's a note on 3. It's just buried into the arpeggio. So he's kind of doing a 2-bar pattern where the bars are very similar but subtly different. I approve. That's really a nice touch. That there's like a slight difference between the first bar and the second bar in his pattern. It's not just the same rhythmic pattern copied and pasted across the bars, but it's got this 2-bar feel. And as we talked about, the verse had that going on also, right? Even in the original, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and, right? So it also had this sort of 2-bar pattern, which is a good thing. 2-bar patterns are Afro-Cuban music. We talked about the clave pattern. We talked about that at some point. That's based on a 2-bar pattern. It's just, yeah, it's nice when you have a groove that's subtly different between the 2 bars. All right, so let's look now at some of the versions of this that people have posted, because everyone's got nice versions of this that all have different things going on. So Colleen, yours is up here first, and I saw what you said about the chord symbol playback, but not in time to actually deal with it. So we're just going to play it as is and not worry about that. But I'll start here with the intro, because I do want to talk about the intro, right? The intro that, or however that goes. That pattern there, that was such a guitar thing. I feel like that's not a good piano intro. But more than that, it's also not a good intro for the purpose. If this song is going to be performed in a church, even if it's a church that has kind of a rock band going on there, it's not as helpful in bringing in the congregation, right? I mean, so here's the joke about singers. How do you know when a singer's knocking on your door? Because they can't find the key and they don't know when to come in. That's the joke. Very unfair, but, whatever. It's a joke. So, we all have to own our music jokes. There's jokes for every instrument, and that's one of them. I'm checking my phone because there might be a bit of news I need to be aware of. So just ignore me if I keep checking my phone. Anyhow, the idea that we might want to give an intro that's more forgiving of perhaps not professional singers. And so, if you want to get the congregation to come in, an introduction that's basically just the last 4 bars. That's an introduction, right? That's an introduction that the whole congregation is then going to be ready to come in with. So that's one of the tried and true introductions, and we might end up using something like that instead of what's there. But anyhow, let's hear what Colleen's part looks like here. All right, so this is just some notes. All right, good. So obviously, yeah, you got the first 3 bars filled in with everything that you want to happen there, and then after that, it looks like you started to get it in there with the left hand, but don't have the right hand. That's how I would. That's what I think you have going on here. Like you intend to eventually finish filling it in like you have that. Now, Rod mentions Let It Be, and I'm curious, Rod, why you mention that, because I have a good reason to mention Let It Be, and I think it's the one I'm talking about, but I want to give you a chance to answer that. So I'll stall a moment and give you a chance to answer. What was the connection to Let It Be? Because I think it's a powerful one, actually. So meanwhile, though, so my observation of, so let me play Colleen's version right here. So what she has is a chord here coming in on the offbeat, on the and of 1, and another chord here on the and of 3. So this version doesn't mimic that original rhythm. It doesn't have a strong, I mean, it has this C here on the and of 2, but it does, but that's like just the middle of a okay. I'm gonna finish my thought, then I'm gonna return to the chat. So it has that note on the and of 2, but it's not necessarily as strongly suggested as the original, which is fine because I mentioned that Mike doesn't keep to his own rhythm like for the verse. He just keeps using the chorus rhythm. He decided that the rhythm that he was playing on guitar for the verse just didn't need to be there for piano, and so he played a verse with he basically played the same pattern for the verse that he did for the chorus in his piano MIDI. But if I wanted to adjust this, I could totally just move that chord here that you have on the and of 1 to the and of 2. Right? I just moved it there. And this note here should, if I wanted to, the second hit that you have on the and of 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That one could be on beat 4 if I wanted to accentuate that original pattern. So I'm going to move that first chord to the end of 2, the second chord over to 4, and just see how it goes. So if I do that, I'm playing it slowly, both to make sure I get it right and to make sure we're all counting it together. 1 and 2. Now, when I do this, it starts to sound kind of like a tango or something for some reason. So what I want to do now is move the arpeggio over. Well, now we have what Mike played, right? So what we're seeing here is the only difference between what you have and what Mike plays, or the main difference here, is just the placement of these beats. You both have that 1-5-1 arpeggiation in the left hand, and you both have a chord that comes in somewhere in the right hand, but your chord comes in on the end of 1, his came in on the end of 2, and his left hand arpeggiation was just 3/8 notes, and you have dotted quarter. But it's the same, so he has bum boo bum. No, he has boo. Yes, boo bum. And then there's the F on the top staff. So you both have essentially the same notes, just different rhythms, right? The one thing that, of course, that you're doing also as a good jazzer that you are is you've got these sixths and ninths on your chords, which sounds lovely, right? It's maybe not the way Mike would have done it, but it's, you know, you have my level as a jazz person. All right, so now I want to come back to the Let It Be thing, because I've been thinking this all along, and I'm going to play you now another version of something. What I'm going to play is, so I asked my wife Kari to do a version of this, and she did this kind of off the cuff a bit. You know, didn't like watch all the videos and all the discussion. She said, "Oh, well, let me just do my own thing." And it's striking how much of the same things she figured out in doing this. I just need to remember how to work my phone to get to that. Okay, I think if I come here and then go here, I will be able to find the most recent video. I think this is the one. Let's try this. Check this out. All right, what just happened in that? Could you hear that okay? I realized I should move it over to the mic, and I don't know how well that came across. But whatever, let me do that one more time. And come on, play you. So, that last little passage, that's absolutely the Let It Be thing. So, that specifically, when I played this as an intro, that's not necessarily Let It Be, but this idea of this descending line from the 4 coming down has a Let It Be aspect to it. And if you listen to the recording of Let It Be, it is voiced like in thirds or sixths. I forget which note's on top. And Kari totally picked on this. She put the D on top, right? So she totally hit on the fact that when you have that descending bass line there, and basically that bass line is his vocal line, right? Shine, shine, right? That's the melody line, but it also becomes the bass line, and it harmonizes really well with a note a third above, or a tenth above, or a third, a sixth below. And that's what Let It Be does. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whisper words of wisdom, let it be. Right? That's Let It Be. So, absolutely, that descending line is reminiscent of Let It Be, but when you combine it with these notes a third above, you get that much more Let It Be-ness out of it. So, it wasn't there in the original. You listen to Mike's version, you don't hear that D coming. You don't hear that D line. Let's just hear that part again. I am going to come back to your comment, Dave.
And shine, rise up, and shine, shine, shine. On you the light of the Lord will shine, shine.
So he's singing, shine, shine, but the bass is just staying on the beat flat, and no one is doing that harmony part there. Now, later choruses, by the end,
Your heart be glad, clear of the Lord is sweet.
he's got harmonies here.
Rise up and shine, rise up and shine, rise up and shine, shine, shine. On you the light of the Lord
Listen to the harmony.
will shine, shine.
Shine, shine. So by the time he gets to later choruses, he does that exact same thing of doing that in thirds. So it's a very natural thing, and I think pianists who do this kind of music recognize, as soon as we hear that descending line coming down from the 4, that it just invites us to do those thirds. And so Kari just naturally, instinctively went there. And I sort of made a point of not doing it in my demo because Mike doesn't do it in his accompaniment, but it is there in his harmony singing, and so absolutely there's no reason it couldn't be there. I was just afraid to go too Let It Be with it, frankly. But we both grew up on that. So, Dave, the short answer to your question is no. The whole reason we are doing this project is to help Mike come up with sheet music. So we are gradually deconstructing. Not that he's incapable of writing this thing out, but he's a busy engineer, works designing aircrafts and aircraft engines and so forth. And has other things going on in his life other than writing out sheet music. So. he asked me if I would help, and I said, well, hey, let's see if we can get the whole community involved here and make it a learning educational project. And he's like, yeah, I love it. So that's why we're doing this, is to help create what will become the first sheet music version of this that then we'll submit to the publisher that he is hoping to work with, and then they will either decide to publish it or not, but either way, he'll have sheet music for it. So, and yes, that is Mike singing the background parts. He does have tools, and he has demonstrated for me how he uses these tools, these automatic harmonizers tools, and they are frankly amazing. In their ability to pick out what you're doing melodically, find an appropriate harmony note for it, and also match that to the chord. So it's amazing what these harmonizer tools do. And so I had that same question for him. Was that you, or is that a harmonizer? He goes, nope, that was me. So yeah, that's his voices there. So again, I just have to check my phone periodically for news updates. Nothing to be concerned about. There's just stuff going on. So anyhow, let's keep moving forward here and looking at some other things. So Kari's version had other things going on that were interesting. So let me play it one more time and talk about one other aspect of it here. Come on, you. Okay, now it doesn't want to play. Oh. Okay, I'm going to stop there. What I hear, her left hand, bum, boo, dum. That's a rhythm that I don't think, well, that's not Mike played boo, 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 bum. Colleen had bum, boo, bum. But Kari, that's Kari playing. It's me holding the camera over her hands. So what Kari played was bum, boo, dum. Well, that I think is brilliant because that captures 1, 2, and. It gives us the top of that arpeggio as our accented note right there. So if you have 3 choices of 1 and 2, or 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, and, those are all fine ways to arpeggiate those 3 notes. But if you really want to emphasize that and of 2, 1, 2, and nails it. And then you can either 1, 2, and, right, bum, do, bum. You can either repeat the chord there or not. Right, so you'd have that choice. So, but what you would want to generally do is be somewhat consistent about that. You might have a slight variation between the first measure and the second measure, the pattern like Mike does. But once you decide what that left-hand arpeggiation pattern is going to look like, and I think, it's pretty well given that a left-hand arpeggiation pattern is a great way to go. It's not the only way to go, but it's a great way to go. I want to take a look at some other people's patterns because a couple other people posted some things here, and we definitely want to take a look and compare and contrast. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down. I know Graham has a version you just posted, and Rod has one that you posted yesterday. And I guess, Rod, you posted yours in the comments. Is that true here? Is this where I'm going to find it? I got to find, Rod, where you posted yours. Oh, under here, I'll bet. Let me find, because I know, so, all right, so give me a moment, and Rod, if you know where yours is offhand, that would be great, but I'm going to take a look at Graham's, since I can find it right away, right? Except now I just lost it again. Come on, Graham, where'd you go? Here you go. Here's Graham, and so we're going to take a look at Graham's here. So Graham he's got actually his second pattern, I really like that second pattern, the way that arpeggiation or the way this works. It's got some great voice leading going on. So Graham's given me 3 different versions here, and here's number 1. All right, stop there. Before I say anything about that, Colleen, I don't know if you're leaving, but I did want to point out about MuseScore because you mentioned that if you enter a chord symbol like F and then you don't want it to play, over here in the properties panel on the left, uncheck play. And then if you don't want chord symbols to play at all for this score, you can open the mixer and you will see a chords channel here and you will mute it. And then that does the job. Or you can select all the chords and turn off play for all of them, or you can turn the volume down on that chords channel. Lots of different ways of silencing chords, but anyhow, how that is done. All right, so back to Graham's version here. So Graham's got a couple really cool things going on here. Well, first of all, he's also doing a jazzy thing here of adding some sixths, right? And then the B flat has sixths also. Now the G minor has a sixth also, and I want to make a comment about minor sixth chords. Okay, so first of all, I love minor sixth chords, especially that minor. Okay, when I say a minor sixth chord, I mean a minor chord with a sixth on it, and the place I love it most is on the minor four chord. In other words, when you have the four chord as a minor chord, that B flat minor chord, the sixth. It's just a beautiful chord, and that's actually what Mike plays. He plays totally this chord, but he plays it with a D flat in the bass. And so we're going to get to use that minor sixth chord sound. However, I want to caution against using that minor sixth chord in places where it doesn't go as well. And I'll tell you why it doesn't, for my money, doesn't work as well here. Let me zoom a little out so we can see a little more here. Yeah, I was trying to avoid going to musescore.com for this, but I probably shouldn't avoid it. I should just go with it. All right, so what happens is the G minor sixth chord is a beautiful chord. I love that sound. It's just a gorgeous sound. In fact, it's the same sound as when lonely feelings chill the windmills of your mind. I wanted to say windmills of my mind, right? That Tony Bennett, Bill Evans, Michel Legrand thing that I posted earlier. That's basically what that chord is. It's the same as a half diminished chord in an inversion. Beautiful chord. But it works best in the situations where it is not, how would I put it, not resolving down a fifth. This situation, when you have a 2-5 here, G minor to C7, what happens is by voicing the G minor chord with a sixth, you're putting an E on it. That E and the B flat create a tritone. Nothing wrong with tritones. Nothing wrong with tritones. But this is C7's tritone, right? C7 is going to need that same tritone. So by voicing a 2 chord, so this is a 2-5, right, in the key of F, G minor to C7, that's 2-5. If you voice the 2 chord with a sixth, you basically make it sound a whole lot like the 5 chord. You're giving it the 5 chord's tritone. So as a general rule of thumb, we don't put sixths on our 2 chords because it's going to make them sound too much like the 5 chord. Now we'll do it if that 2 chord, if we're just going to sit on it for a long time. But if we actually have a 2-5, if we actually have a case of a minor 7th chord resolving down a fifth to a dominant chord, if we have this 2-5 type of situation, we generally don't put a sixth on that chord. So that's just a completely unrelated aside to anything else we've been talking about, but it's a good thing to know. It's a good jazzer thing to know. But other than that, the sixths are really working well here for again, for my taste. Whether or not it's the right thing for Mike's sheet music or not is another matter. But he also hits on this 1 and 2 and simply by syncopating that, by having this note on the and of 2 not followed by something on 3, we get that accent on the and of 2 which we want. So there you go. Oh, Rod, you put it in my harmony and rhythm section from 10 days ago. Okay, I'm going to find that because I know I can do it. So let me do that, but I will, if you can find the link and post it in here, that'd be great. But if not, I will find it. But I do want to finish going through some of Graham's others because the other patterns are really interesting also. So this one works mostly by making the rhythm happen in the right hand as opposed to the left hand, like some of the rest of us were doing, arpeggiating in the left hand. Is one right and the other wrong? No, they're both fine ways of doing it. So this is actually more similar to Mike's guitar part, right? Because he's got the guitar repeating, the bass repeating. There's not arpeggiation going on in the original. So nothing about the way that the rest of us have been doing this by arpeggiating matches what Mike did. It's just, us trying to feel pianistic. This feels, it's not hard to play on piano. There's nothing wrong with it on piano, but it feels more like Mike's version. It feels definitely closer to Mike's version than anyone else, than any of the rest of us have. We all feel like we're doing a separate piano thing. This feels like it's more faithful to the original, while also being, subtly different in its placement of accents. But let's listen to pattern 2 here. It's kind of cool. All right, so what I like about this, first of all, there's a lot of things I like about it. It's quite simple to play, right? It just requires one hand at a time to play. So the playability is really nice. But also the voice leading, right? This is the only version of it that we've really encountered in which someone says, hey, when we go to the 1 chord to the 4 chord, maybe we don't need to play that 4 chord in root position. Maybe we keep that 4 chord with the F and the bass. Right? Maybe we keep that F in the bass. So we keep the F in the bass. That's good voice leading. That's from a perspective of let's use inversions on our chords to create smoother bass motion. I like that a lot. And if I were writing this song myself, I might do that. There is a question of, well, at what point are you deviating too far from the way, because Mike does use some inversions, and we're going to try to use his inversions because I think they make a lot of sense. This one makes sense, but it's not what he did. So this is a bit of a change. It's a good change, definitely a good change. Whether or not I would want to do that in the sheet music that I present as representing his song is another matter. Now, here, I don't know if this is a typo or not, but you've got this E at the end. Whoops. So here, that E feels out of place for this B flat chord, right? Because this is like a sharp 11 on a B flat chord, and it creates another tritone, and then we're about to have that tritone again. So again, this is a little too much sounding C7-y. So maybe it was a typo. If that was an F, that would be totally fine. And then I would keep the F here. These ones where I said that E for the G minor 6th, I don't really want the 6th. I do want a 7th. And then I would keep the F, basically. No. Or whatever the next voicing is. I don't think you tried to make it. So here's the thing. I did this. Let's talk about that. Could that have been an E flat? Well, an E flat wouldn't have fit the B flat chord either. I mean, that's the 4th on it, and there would be no reason to put a 4th there. If we're going to emphasize a note because we're trying to make an and of 2 be an accent there, we want it to be the chord itself. So whatever notes we put there, we want them to strongly suggest the chord. So I don't want the only note that I hear on that position to be a non-chord tone. I want it to be either the full chord or a strong chord tone, root 3rd or 5th. And so the and of 2 isn't inherently a strong position, but the fact that we know we're trying to emphasize that, and he is emphasizing it through the syncopation, that's what makes me want to make sure it's a strong chord tone. All right, so the way he's got his C7 chord here voiced is, so this is fine, man. That's a C7 chord. It's a straight arpeggio of a C7 chord. The reason I didn't play it that way, I played this when I just played it a second ago. Remember, I played, and then I was trying to voice lead between the 2 chords. In other words, if I think of this as my G minor 7, then voice leading wise, if the G goes down to C, I want my F to come down to E, and then I guess this B flat will go down to the G, this D will go down to the B flat, and I'll have this. Now that's muddy, but it's okay when you're arpeggiating, because we're not going to hear all four of those notes together. Even if I use the pedal to sustain them, it's still not unacceptably muddy. So for me, that's better voice leading. That's good voice leading, but this is awkward to play. I don't like. All right, good to have that clarification, Graham. But I go for the obvious. Go for the obvious here. So this is hard to play because I'm trying to like reach from my thumb, my pinky to my third finger, and then my second finger and my thumb on this arpeggio, and that's just awkward. So I might try to put my thumb on the G and then cross over. I don't love it either way. It's not as easy to play. So what you have is clearly easier to play. But then I might question, well, now is that a little too low? And would I be better off having it up here? Or is there some other way to do it? I don't know. But that's the question I would be asking. Or, you know, is it okay to keep as long as we're inverting things and just playing with those ideas, maybe we do that, you know? That would be good. I mean, that's all about that Bach prelude, the C major prelude, in which all the chords are inverted to give you the maximally smooth inversions all over the place. Not that this is the Bach prelude, but I can't help but think of the Bach prelude when I see that F major 7 chord being arpeggiated here because right, that's in that piece. So I just thought of that. All right, so people's favorite, though, of Graham's was this last one here. Okay, so let me just address the thing about the F. If you think the F sounds slightly dull, part of the reason is it's the fifth of the chord. And when I set a strong chord tone to emphasize on the end of 2 there, I'd really rather it be the root. So that could be a reason to actually, you know, actually go to root position. But if we wanted to stick with this inversion idea, because it's a good idea, it could be something like that or some other variation. See, the thing is that note sounds fine on its own. I have no problem with that as an arpeggio, but the extent to which it actually indicates a B flat chord is another matter. And if there's a guitar player at the same time playing a B flat chord and you're playing this E here while they're playing this, and the singer is singing Shine, this is now more dissonant than it was in the original. The original was just a triad there, right? So you've got to think about all of that context, not just about that note. You have to think about the fact that a guitar player might be playing the B flat chord and a singer might be playing that note, which is a tritone away from the bass note that you're trying to emphasize here. So yeah, I mean, for me, again, as a jazz person, I'm okay with certain levels of dissonance and interesting crunches. I'm perfectly okay with those in my world as a jazz musician, but not as comfortable with it for this song. So anyhow, let's now hear this last version. All right, so good. Yeah, I like also the use of the chord as accent there, and now repeating notes in the bass, and that really makes that F inversion there really shine there, because now we're not having to answer any weird questions about how we're arpeggiating. It's just that's a great bass line. Love it. For my purposes as an accompanist pianist, I mean, I might gravitate there and do that sort of thing, those repeated notes and bass lines that are really active. I mean, that's not active in the sense of moving, but it's rhythmically active, right? I will say that sheet music doesn't typically do that. You know, these piano, voice, guitar things more typically arpeggiate things, which is not the way someone in a rock band would necessarily play this. I mean, I feel like this actually kind of nails the way I might play this if I were playing with their band. If I was playing with Mike's band, and so we had a bass player, we had a guitar player, and all. I mean, I don't know that I would play that left hand part if there was a bass player, but if I was playing just me and Mike, and he had his guitar and singing, this might exactly be what I play because it really captures that bass. Really captures that bass. Well. So yeah. Now the thing, and again, it's got that and here. Now the one thing that's not happening really on any of these is the 1, 2, 2, bum, bum, the note on 4. The fact that there was a strong accent on 4. None of these really, pattern 1 doesn't really have much on 4, just a single bass note. Pattern 2 has nothing on beat 4. The accent was really on the chord accent was on the and of 3. But if I move that chord to 4, hey, let's try that. Instead of that, now the question is it too sparse? Well, it was already pretty sparse. I'm now taking that sparseness that it originally had and saying, yeah, we're rolling with it. That is pretty sparse though. And yes, even if I pedal it, I'm playing it wrong. That total back and forth between the hands, I like that. I like that as a spice, is what I would say. The fact that the hands aren't working together really, the right hand does almost nothing but provide that accent. The left hand plays that, boop doo dump, and then leaves all that space, boop doo dump, and then leaves all that space. That's an interesting groove. It's a popular type of approach in a funk context. Doo doo, don't. This I've just made up that line. It's nothing. But this bass line that has a lot of space in it. Doo doo, boo doo doo, boom boom boom, boom. I'm just making up bass lines, but they're very oriented around space in a certain type of funk styles, and then using the piano to just right hand to just provide some occasional chord accents. So this stuff all works well in a band context. But if we're just trying to say this is the accompaniment, I would say it's probably a bit too sparse. That we'd want it to be more like this one is. This one's a little fuller. And so yeah, I like that one. So let's see if we can find Rod's version. So here's what I'm going to do. If I come over to the community here, if I click your name, Rod, I think I can get to your, haha, nice. I can get to your stuff. Here's your 3 attempts. Yay, there we go. All right, so found it. Hey, if anyone's still here, sorry, I guess I accidentally, I guess when I loaded rods up, I went off. I don't know. I'm sorry, folks, but I'll do something and wrap up in a little bit. Uh, so Rod, I will hopefully get yours and get to figure out what's going on. But in any case, see you later.